I've been a search and rescue officer for a while now, and I've seen my fair share of strange and unexplainable things during my time in the field. But nothing could have prepared me through all my training for what I saw on one particular mission, deep in the forest of the Pacific Northwest. It was a late summer day when we got a call from a family who had been hiking in the wilderness. Their younger daughter had wandered off and was nowhere to be found. The family was understandably distraught, and we immediately assembled a team to begin the search. We arrived at the trailhead and set out into the woods. We searched for hours, calling out the girl's name and scanned the surrounding area for any sign of her. As the day wore on, the forest grew thicker and the search became more difficult. We had to navigate steep inclines, dense underbrush, and rocky terrain, but still we pushed on, determined to find the missing girl. As the sun began to set, we realized that we were running out of time. We knew that we had to find her before nightfall, when the forest would become even more dangerous and difficult to navigate. It was then that we heard something. It was a faint sound like somebody whispering in the distance. At first, we thought that it was just the wind, but as we got closer, we realized that it was coming from a small clearing up ahead. When we arrived at the clearing, we saw something strange. In the center was a small, dilapidated cabin. At this point, we hadn't seen signs of civilization for a while now, and the cabin appeared to have been empty for years. We cautiously approached it, calling out for the missing girl, but there was no response, only the sound of nature, rustling leaves, and the creaking wood of trees. As we got to the cabin, we noticed something strange. There were markings covering the trees surrounding the clearing, strange symbols that were difficult to identify. They looked ancient, as if they had been there for centuries. We entered the cabin, our flashlights cutting through the darkness. The inside of the cabin was even more disturbing than the outside. The walls were lined with strange symbols and symbols of animals, and the air was thick with the smell of decay. We searched the cabin looking for any sign of the missing girl, but there was nothing. Only a few pieces of furniture and a small and empty fireplace. As we were about to leave, we heard the whispering again, only this time it was louder. We followed the sound, which led us to a small trap door in the corner of the cabin. We opened it, revealing a dark and musty cellar. It was only then that we heard the sound of footsteps coming from somewhere deep within the cellar. We cautiously descended the rickety stairs, our flashlights casting eerie shadows on the walls. The footsteps grew louder and more frantic as we got closer, until we finally reached the end of it. What we saw there still messes with me. In the center of the room was a small wooden altar, strange symbols etched into its surface. And on the altar was the missing girl, unconscious and surrounded by candles. But there was something else in the room with us, something dark and malevolent. It was a presence that I cannot describe in words. A feeling of dread that seemed to fill every inch of the room. We didn't hesitate and quickly gathered the girl and left the cabin, making our way back to the trailhead as quickly as possible. We made it back to the station and reunited the daughter with her parents. Looking back on all this, we never found any cult activity related directly to this, but there had been occurrences of it in the area. It's just such a strange feeling. I knew that when we were down in that cellar, there was something else there with us, but I just couldn't put my finger on it. Before this, I never really believed in the supernatural or anything like that. But if I'm being honest, I definitely do today. I'll give a little background about myself for my story. I'm a young gay male living in a medium-sized city. The dating scene is rather limited, and most gay people use apps or websites for meeting others for encounters or dates. I frequent websites and apps daily just to see if there's anyone new out there that I haven't already spoken to. Yet I rarely actually meet anyone from online. The fear of getting hurt or being robbed has always been in the back of my mind, so I generally just browse without ever actually meeting anybody. Around 6 months ago, while browsing Craigslist, I found an ad that seemed to be somewhat what I was looking for. The ad was by a man a little older than myself, who seemed to want the same things that I wanted. He wanted to meet up with a guy my age and get to know one over drinks, maybe a little cuddle session, and whatever else may follow, and not just a quickie kind of thing. After responding to the ad, the guy and I talked for about a month through texting without ever making plans of meeting. I finally got the confidence and asked if he wanted to meet. He agreed, and we decided that I would drive to his place, which was about 10 miles from me and out of the city limits. The day that we decided to meet, it was getting late, about 6 p.m. The sun was still somewhat out, but it was getting darker. I got in my car and drove out to the area where he lived. The guy texted me and said that he would be walking on the east side of the road because he was coming back from visiting with a friend, and just asked that I pick him up to go back to his place. He told me before that he had 2 kids that lived with him, but that the kid's mother wasn't in the picture. He says that his kids were at a friend's house and he would be back later, so we would have the place to ourselves. While making my way to the guy's house, I saw him walking on the side of the road. He was holding a large speaker and covered in a hoodie, which seemed strange because it wasn't cold at all where we live. The road that we were on was very much outside the city lines, on a dirt road with random trailers set up every acre or so. I stopped the car and said something friendly like, "Hey stranger, need a ride?" He didn't smile. He just opened the door and got into my car without saying a word. I thought that this was odd because we literally spent a month having friendly chats, and I figured that he would act happy to see me, or at least not awkward about it. After picking him up and making my way to his house, he then tells me to turn around and go back to the main road. He wanted to get a blunt and some alcohol so that we could chill together. So, not thinking anything strange at this point, I agree and head back the other way. While on this long dirt road with no streetlights, he mentions that his power is out at his house and asked if that's okay with me. I was slightly thrown off by this, but I said, sure, as long as you have candles or something. He didn't say anything, just kept looking straight ahead like I never said anything. I then thought, what about your kids? How are children living in a house with no power? And so I asked him, and this is where things started to get very strange. He replied, "Oh, they're staying with my mom for a while. But he just told me a few days ago that his kids lived with him with no mother." And questions ran through my mind, but I didn't feel like I was in trouble yet. We arrived at the store and he got out with his face and head covered like he was hiding from somebody. This seemed strange. And then he got back in the car after making his purchase. While traveling back to his place, which was about a 15-minute drive, he then told me, "I had to sling drugs to get money for this so we could hang out tonight." I was very surprised and shocked when he randomly told me this. The situation was getting sketchy, so I asked if he had any protection, just in case we decide that we needed them. He said no, so I dropped him off at another store nearby before starting our journey down a long dirt road. After inconsistent and strange behaviors coming from the guy, I was just really wanting to get out of this situation as fast as I could at this point. I dropped him off at the local grocery store to pick up protection, thinking this could be my out. I could just drive away and block his number and be done with the situation. After he walked into the store, I was trying to figure out what to do at this point. I wanted to just drive away, but I didn't want to just leave somebody stranded. I finally got the nerve to leave, but his huge speaker was sitting in my floorboard. I wanted nothing connecting me with this person, and feared that he might possibly say that I stole the speaker. So I got out of my car, ran to the passenger side, opened the door and started dragging the speaker from the car, and I heard, "What are you doing?" It was him, and he was right behind me. Fear ran through my body like I had been caught stealing something or lying about a bad grade to my parents. I told him, "Oh, I was going to move this to the back seat so you would have more room in the car." A quick save, and he seemed to have bought my horrible explanation. But now he's here in my car and my only out is gone. We're driving down the old, dark, dirt road, and all that's going through my mind is, how do I get out of this alive? I'm trying to catch him in another lie to see if this is actually happening or just my imagination. But I can't seem to get any information out of him. He just sits beside me, looking straight ahead, fidgeting with something in his pockets, as though he has a mission to complete, and I'm just here to bring it to him. After driving about 15 minutes down the dirt road, I noticed that there are no longer trailers. The road is pitch black, only lit up by my headlights. I then ask him if his place is coming up, because the navigation said it should be right here. He tells me, "Oh, the address that I gave you is an old business. My address doesn't show up on Google Maps for some reason." Red alert. I started panicking, just knowing that I was about to be robbed or killed in a few moments. I slowed the car down and just thought of anything that could get me out at this point. I told him that my best friend was waiting for me to get back to have drinks with her. I said that I didn't realize we would be driving so much and that it would take this long. I'm not sure if he bought the excuse or not, but I told him that I texted my friend the address he gave me so she would know how long I would be out, and when to expect me back for our planned night out. He seemed to trust my explanation, but was very irritated. He said to me, "Well, can't we just have a little car fun real quick right here? Nobody lives out here, so nobody will even see us." I said, "No, I'm sorry, my friend is going to be pissed and she's already called me when you were in the store." I told her that I would only be about 30 minutes and be back in time for drinks. I was ready to abandon my car at this point to be pulled out a knife or anything other than a gun. But luckily, he just kind of huffed, got out of my car and slammed the door, and started to put his head in the window to tell me something. I quickly hit the gas and turned the wheel, leaving nothing but a smoke cloud behind me. I couldn't see him in the rearview mirror due to the darkness of the night, but I imagine he might have been flipping me off or coughing from the dust plume made by my tires. After pulling myself together and realizing that I might have been the next Oprah story, I called my friend who wasn't waiting for me, my mom, my sister, everyone that I loved, and told them a slimmed version of the story that took place that night. I teared up a little thinking that I could have almost died, but I overcame that pretty quickly. When I got home that night, I decided to pull up the address he gave me. I noticed that about 2 miles down the road, there was one house sitting alone with no neighbors. The road was a dead end. I then used Google Street View and saw that the house was completely abandoned with no doors and dirty walls. I googled the actual address of that house and found that it was posted for sale about 5 years ago and was still on the market. I'm guessing nobody wants to purchase a possible drug house. My friends told me later that they imagined that he wanted to get me to the house and do whatever he wanted, since there is no traffic that far down the road. I'm sure it would take quite a while to find a body that went missing. After all of this, I vowed to never meet anyone from Craigslist ever again, unless it's in a police parking lot. I did vow to just never leave my house, but school and work have made that impossible. All in all, I'm okay with what happened, but it really brought to light what could happen when you least suspect it. I was 18 years old and was looking for a place to move in before I started my first semester of college, since living about 2 hours away in the backwoods wasn't very practical. The first place I looked into was great. Safe area, close to my job location, 10 minutes from school, etc. The only issue was when I went to sign up for the place. Pricing had gone up significantly since they last updated their website. Not knowing this, I put down my non-refundable deposit and was out $850 in less than 2 hours. Ouch. So now I'm out a significant chunk of money, set to start my new job in less than a week and to have no place to move into. Here comes my mom with an idea. Look for a room to rent on Craigslist. I know, stupid, but I was desperate and she just wanted to help. After browsing, I found a room available for rent that was within my price range and decided to scope out the place. I met with my soon-to-be roommate, who we'll call B. B was a gay man, yes, it's important, in his early 30s. He was new to the area, a born-again Christian, very laid back and just seemed like a cool guy in general. I met him with my mother and stepfather, none of us getting a weird vibe from him, and after he showed me the room and private bathroom, and we decided to go for it. The only thing my stepdad insisted on was installing a slide lock on the door before I moved in. I handed B my deposit and he handed me my keys, telling me to go ahead and start moving in my things. Less than 48 hours later, I was moved in and waving bye to my parents. The morning I moved in, B wasn't there. No biggie, it was a Sunday morning and I assumed he was at church or something. Lunchtime rolled around and I figured a Sunday brunch. Afternoon came by and I sent him a text. Evening I called, no answer. 8 p.m., 10 p.m., nothing. Finally, I got tired and decided, screw it. One last text and I'm going to bed. Around 1 a.m., I woke up to someone knocking on the front door. It took me a second to remember where I was, but once I did, I was curious if B ever made it home. The knocking continued and I thought maybe B forgot his house key or something, and I came out into the living room to open the door. B wasn't on the other side. It was a thin lady with ratty brown hair looking around confused. One of the first things I noticed was she was in a dirty t-shirt. It was late December and like 32 degrees outside. I'd been around enough druggies in my day to know she was probably gacked out. Regardless, I smiled and talked. Hi, can I help? Is B here? She interrupted me and stuck her head through the door to look inside. I don't think so, he hasn't been here all day. Are you a friend of his? I'm actually really worried about him. She suddenly shoved past me and into the house before answering. No, he won't answer my texts or calls. Where's he at? I don't know, ma'am. Your guess is as good as mine. I chuckled nervously, legit worried that my new roommate could be dead or hurt somewhere and no one knows it. She looked back to the doorway and I followed her gaze and almost shit bricks. A giant man steps through the doorway. He was a very dark, complected black man wearing all dark clothing, black jeans, a black turtleneck, black boots. He was standing a bit behind her on the porch, and this guy was tall, like really tall. He barely looked like he fit through the door without having to duck under. The woman starts pacing around the living room, asking me again and again if I knew where B was. Before she got too carried away, the man told her they should sit down and chill for a minute before guiding her to sit down with him on the couch. I cautiously sat across from them on the love seat across the room. From here on, I'll call the girl CL and the guy BA. After a pace or two of awkward silence, I try to make small talk with the two of them, asking them how they knew B, their names, and don't remember them, where they're from, etc. Trying to use what southern hospitality I have to make the situation better, hoping that it doesn't get out of hand and dangerous. I quickly realized BA was sober, and didn't seem to have anything going on with him like what the chick did. He stayed cool and level with me the entire time. He had a hand firmly gripped on CL's shoulder. All of a sudden, CL jumps up and says that she has to use the bathroom. I told her where my bathroom was, and she quickly told me that she wanted to use B's instead. I argued a bit, telling her I wasn't comfortable with her doing that since he wasn't home. She ignored me and went towards the back of the house where B's room, and I assumed the master bath, shutting the room's door behind her. BA leaned forward, elbows on his knees, and just stared at me for a while. looking me over and honestly making me a bit nervous. Easy, since I was already a bit on edge. He finally spoke after a long pause. "What are you doing here, girl?" "I moved up here for college." "How old are you?" "How old do I look?" "I guess something in the early mid-20 range." I told him I was 18. He cursed, sounding legit concerned. "You're not from around here." Not a question, a fact. He knew that I was in over my head, that I was uncomfortable in questioning what I was even doing in that house with two strangers at 1 a.m., and that I was honestly afraid. "Do you know about B's past?" When I told him no, BA unleashed a whole load of information to me. B used to do drugs like hard stuff. He's new to the area due to his drug issues, and that's how he knew CL. B is supposedly clean now except for the occasional thing. All this stuff I figured honestly. B looked like he had lived a rougher life, and I wasn't going to judge him for his past. BA sighed and asked me something I wasn't expecting. "You haven't done anything with him, right?" Obviously no, he was gay. Needles or nothing. Again no, I was clean. "Good, gonna be real with you. B's got it, so be careful, alright? Guy should have told you. Also, I ain't sure, but I think he gets his money from doing some bad stuff. So keep your head down until you get the heck out." CL came back into the living room then, and BA stood up and told her that they were leaving. She put up a bit of a fight about it, but he quickly escorted her through the hallway, yelling at her to shut up and wait in the car. Before he left, he told me that I wasn't safe there. Told me to leave, be smart, stay in school, and be better than all of them. He wished me good night and shut the door. I jumped up and locked it. Not gonna lie, I had a meltdown panic attack. Welcome to the city, kid. Next morning, B was home. He asked if someone was over. I identified the woman and told me that she had raided his medicine cabinet last night. Told me that it was okay, but to never let anyone in if they mentioned his name. Said people will come around that he doesn't want around. Told me that he was going out and he left for the day. The next 2 days kind of blurred together, so my apologies. I figured out B's job the next night when I heard him open the back door into his house with a hookup. The guy left. I heard B tell him that he can't use the front door and to go through the backyard. And this repeated, I kid you not, around 5 times that night, until I finally left my room to pee, and I see a guy leaning over the kitchen counter. The dude spun around to see me standing there and quickly adjusted his pants while cursing. B straightened himself from his kneeling position a few seconds later. The guy opened his wallet, handed B some cash, and left out the back door. Great. I went back to my room and called my best friend and her husband, crying and wanting out. They were staying at a hotel in town that night and invited me to come stay with them. I moved back home again until I found a new place. No more Craigslist ads, no more strange roommates. I was out another 800s from the B situation, and so I felt even more defeated. B knew what he was doing. He knew that he was putting me in danger by lying to me and bringing me into that situation. BA got his nickname because that's what he became to me, an angel. If he never would have warned me that night, I could have been in real trouble, and possibly even gotten sick because of this reckless behavior about this guy that I lived with. I would love to meet BA again and thank him, but not B. Him and CL can do their own thing, far, far away from me.